Just a quick heads up. This mini episode uses an AI-generated voice modeled after Pablo. Same ideas, same insights, just a different format. Let's get into it. You know, the hardest part of AI adoption in property management isn't just changing the workflow, or about getting the team to understand what AI handles now, where the coordinator steps in, where the AI teammate keeps moving. There's more to it than that. Once AI starts absorbing the coordination layer itself, the human role has to move too, because maintenance is no longer just about pushing work orders forward. It's about protecting the experience while the work is happening. And if your maintenance coordinator is still measured by how fast they touch every work order, or how much visible busyness they show on a Monday morning, the old role is going to keep sneaking back into the new workflow. In this mini episode, my conversations with David Normand, Rob Kazin, Chris Widley, Stacia Davis, and Stacy Salyer help us break down the next layer of AI-first maintenance. This one's not about whether AI changes the maintenance coordinator role. This is what happens after. Because people don't follow the workflow you announced. They follow the scoreboard you reward. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go.
Imagine rolling out your AI-first maintenance workflow, saying the AI teammate is going to handle the intake, the triage, the resident follow-up, the vendor dispatch, the routine updates, all the coordination loops that used to eat your calendar. And everybody nods. But then Monday morning happens, and your maintenance coordinator is still trying to prove value the old way. Touch the ticket, answer the resident, chase the vendor, be the hero. And listen, that used to be the job. When humans were the system, activity looked like ownership. But when AI starts owning more of the repeatable work, activity can turn into interference. Because if your AI teammate is built to move the work order forward, and your coordinator keeps grabbing the wheel to just handle it real quick, you didn't create an AI-first workflow. You created a detour back to the old one. And worse, you kept your team focused on the work order instead of the experience happening around it. Because the real risk in maintenance is not just that the ticket sits too long. It's that the resident starts feeling ignored. The owner starts losing confidence. The vendor delay starts turning into frustration. The ember starts becoming a fire. That's what the new scorecard has to catch. Before AI, the maintenance coordinator's job was to keep the conveyor belt moving. A work order came in. A decision had to be made. If the coordinator knew what to do, they moved it forward. If they didn't, they escalated. The goal was simple. Don't let boxes pile up. And honestly, that was a good model for manual maintenance. But it was still manual.
I had this method I used way back in the day called the FedEx method, where I would literally draw a picture. It would have about 7 different FedEx, like what you put a box on, like a conveyor belt, and each one was labeled something different. And then I had decisions and then vendor decisions on the bottom. It was like the first workflows there. And I gave them a picture which showed what a successful FedEx process looks like and what a bad one looks like, and had a pile of boxes. And so I said, anytime that a box comes out here, you have a decision that you know need to move, just pass it on. And if you go, I'm the person that you pass it to. So that's literally what, if I wish I had a picture at the very beginning, my maintenance coordinators would always be a hand-drawn FedEx method with decisions on them to help people to understand how to route maintenance so that you don't have boxes pile up. I used to have them like 55 desks. So that was the very beginning.
And then at every decision-making point, they didn't know the answer to because of previous experience, they'd come to you, and then you'd give that.
Yep. Ping, come to me, make the decision. And then they would learn like another, like another level. Like I always say, right, there's nothing new in maintenance.
Yeah.
It's just whether or not you can manage communications and processes really well. The same things are happening over and over. So if you can get into a really good process, you're probably going to get about 80 to 85% automation, which is funny because fast forward all the way to today.
That was the old scoreboard. Keep the boxes moving. And for a long time, that was exactly what the business needed. But when AI enters the workflow, the question changes. The coordinator's value is no longer just, how many boxes did you move? It becomes, why are the boxes getting stuck in the first place? Rob Kazin gives us the cleanest version of what happens next. When AI starts owning more of the repeatable coordination work, the maintenance coordinator does not disappear. They move up a layer. They stop being the person who touches everything, and they become the person watching the whole system.
I had to train, or actually we had to train the thought process of our maintenance coordinators that they're less coordinating things and they're more operational. Like you're just moving pieces, making sure everything's moving where it's supposed to go. So you're just watching the operation, looking for things that are failing, figuring out what caused it to fail, and then call in those adjustments to it. So once I got my maintenance coordinators thinking at that level, I was like, the AI is another maintenance employee. Tell it what to do. This is your subordinate. This is your assistant. Now you're telling it what to do. Instead of calling that tenant, tell it to call that tenant. Tell it to, or communicate with that tenant, and then you go on to doing these things that I need you to get these estimates done, get these invoices done, of just the like we got an insight. We get the insights every week for ours, and our insights this week was, where is it? I mean, one of the first things that y'all display is 85% of our work orders were managed without our involvement, and that's an insight that comes in on before then. That 85% was on my maintenance coordinator's shoulders. Yeah. It's like, holy cow, that is a huge percentage. And then that gets you realizing, the efficiency of the program, and then and solidifies, my decision that I made the right move on this. We're loving it.
That clip gives us the first real version of the new KPI. The point is not to worship the 85%. The point is to inspect the 15%. Why did those work orders still need a human? That is where the new coordinator earns their keep, by making next week's system smarter than this week's system, and by improving the operational health of the experience while the work order is still unfolding. But old habits do not show up as rebellion. They show up as helpfulness. An owner wants an update, and someone jumps in manually because it feels faster than teaching the AI what to do. That used to be good service. In the new workflow, it can become system interference.
So I've had to fight with my PMs and some of my maintenance coordinators just based off of old ways of doing things and old ways of thinking, because it is another step sometimes, versus the PM could just, if the tenant's asking something, the PM could just go look it up real quick, give it to what the tenant needs, and then they can do it. But they don't realize they're taking time out of their day, even though they think it's real quick in their head, they could just do it and be done. Yeah. It's, I had to fight with them and go, no, don't do that anymore. Tell the maintenance, our AI to get that done for you or stuff like that. So when we were bringing in, really when we were building the pod structure on how that was going to operate with the AI, because we went from, and this kind of circles back on the conversation about that our company, because we had in-house maintenance technicians and I utilized subcontractors too, and we're a separate company. We're not a division of the management company. You guys had to kind of split everything out and then rebuild and build new structures that covered. And then I changed and we started doing these pods. So y'all had to adjust again. That covered, okay, now the AI's got to recognize the pods. It's got to recognize who's inside the pods. It's got to recognize how to find the information on who's responsible for the address that's tied to the pod, and all kinds of things.
That is the behavioral trap. The team learned the workflow. Now they have to stop proving value the old way, because every time someone says, I'll just do it myself, they may be creating a faster answer today and a weaker system tomorrow. For years, that manual touch felt like care, like ownership, like service. But the new question is different. Did the resident get an answer? Yes. But did the system learn how to answer it next time? Manual speed solves the ticket. System coaching solves the pattern. And in maintenance, patterns are where the margin lives. This is where Chris Widley adds another layer. The new KPI is not only about efficiency, it is about human energy. A tired coordinator might still clear tickets, answer the phone, and absorb resident frustration. But what does it cost?
That's what I did. I spent, I think, a full month as we're setting up the systems, doing all of our due diligence, just calling the number that you gave us, that's our number, before we patched it over, before it was integrated in anything, and just trying to break it, saying horrible things to the receptionist, just messing with her every way I could, being belligerent, going on long tirades, being angry, right? That was one of the cool things that happened during that process, because these girls are awesome here. They are my front line, and they deal with a lot of abuse. Things aren't going their way. Some people can get really angry. They're listening to that chatter all the time, and it wears on you, and it gets you. It's really hard not to have a shorter temper. It's really hard to believe in people. It's really hard to do the things that you need to do and make the good decisions in that situation when you don't know the next time when you pick up the phone what you're going to get. So when I started messing with the receptionist, and this was way back before she was this good, I was like, man, this is going to free up my office to do things they need to do, and more importantly, have the freshness to deal with the serious tenants and solve the problems without wanting to pull their hair out, and God forbid quit, because I can't replace these ladies.
That word freshness matters, because once AI absorbs the repetitive coordination motion, the team finally has space. Space to handle the serious resident issue. Space to catch the vendor delay before it becomes an owner complaint. Space to protect the experience while it is still recoverable. That's the outcome shift. The goal is not just fewer calls, it's fewer fires, because resident experience is usually lost in the embers before it. Now, this is the part we need to be careful with. There is no single universal KPI every PMC should copy and paste. A 150-door owner-operator, a 600-door SFR company with VAs, and a 1,500-door operator with an internal maintenance department should not all measure the exact same thing. The KPI has to reflect the workflow, and the workflow has to reflect the business. Stacia Davis explains this from the leadership side.
This is different. You are essentially onboarding a new department into your company. You are building out your AI team and your AI department. We can customize things. We can train agents. Your AI is not going to function exactly like your competitor down the road, because we have different needs and different processes and different things that fit our long-term vision. And so I think keeping it in mind and thinking of it more as a new hire and a new department versus a solution that I'm going to open the box and turn on and walk away from is extremely important. And making sure your team understands that too. Give us the feedback. How is this working for you? What would you love to see? What could potentially be helpful that we haven't thought about yet? Maybe there's more we can do with this than we even thought of at the first go round. And just keeping that long-term vision and that growth mindset around this.
That's the management layer. The KPI is not just a number. It is a message from leadership. It tells the team, this is what good looks like now. And this is why the metric cannot be generic, because your workflow is not generic. Your vendors, your NTE thresholds, owner rules, property level exceptions, pod structure, approval paths, your resident communication standards. That is business. So the scorecard has to measure the human behavior that workflow now requires, not what the old workflow used to reward. And when that happens, it tells the team whether they're allowed to become who the new workflow needs them to be. And this is where the new role becomes concrete. The AI team lead is not sitting around thinking strategically in some vague way. They are becoming storytellers. People who can take field judgment and translate it into instructions the AI teammate can actually run. David Normand gave a simple example with a leaky faucet.
I want a storyteller, okay? Because a storyteller, and I want a person who thinks about outcomes, right? So a storyteller has the ability to write really great prompts, right? Or thinks about really good workflows for outcomes, because now they're a leader, right? They're not a solo operator. You're leading a team of AI agents, right? So they need to come back and look at the data. And I'll give you an example. Okay. What if the data showed that every single time a work order came in for a leaky faucet, that 99.9% of the time it resulted in a vendor dispatch? Okay. Now, do you use that information just to continue the same old process? And that's great. Or do you use that information to say to your AI agent, hey, this specific work order type now qualifies for express vendor assignment, and you just lowered your work order average for that work order type, maybe from like 4 days down to like 2 days. And then the resident isn't asked 6 questions. They only need to get a photo now. And maybe the prompt, maybe the thing that the AI coordinator actually says to the resident is like, hey, just FYI, this one qualifies for an express vendor assignment. We hope to have resolved this in the next 24 hours of you. And then the resident's like, whoa, like, right? That's how the new AI team leads need to be thinking about maintenance coordination, because now maintenance isn't the same every single day. The data and your ability to write prompts and change workflows can completely change the way that we're handling maintenance down to the very specific work order type, and no longer grouping things just as plumbing or just as HVAC, right? Like now we can have specific workflows and prompts down to those intimate work order levels and really be moving the needle. And that's how we're getting from 17% down to 9.8%. And I think people can even get lower than that if they really adopted that AI team lead model.
That is the new KPI in action, not vague innovation. Storytelling. Because the AI team lead is translating the business into a playbook the system can execute. Vendor nuance, resident expectation, owner rules, emergency judgment, and that changes what we measure. Not just how fast did we move the work order, but did the system create a better experience while the work order was happening? Did it reduce unnecessary friction? Did it surface frustration earlier? Did it protect the relationship before the fire started? That is the shift. The best AI-first teams are not just tracking where the work order is. They are watching where the experience is heading. Measure the work AI makes possible, the judgment they protected, the playbook they improved, the issue they caught early before it turned into something bigger. Because in an AI-first maintenance operation, the best coordinator is not the one who touches everything. It's the one who makes the whole system smarter, the one who teaches the system how the business actually runs, so residents feel cared for, owners stay confident, and the team starts spotting embers before they become fires. And because the work changed, so stop measuring your AI-first team like a manual team, and make sure your KPI rewards the team for moving the business forward, not backwards. Because the teams that move forward will be the ones rewarded for building the future, and not for protecting the past.